This is Mr. Muffin. When he was a young kitten, he was throwing up all the time and I didn't know why. It took me a long time to figure it out. Why cats throw up and what happened with Mr. Muffin coming up. So, when Mr. Muffin was a young cat, not a tiny baby, but still a kitten, he was throwing up all the time, usually several times a week and maybe sometimes even up to once a day. And I had no idea why. Mr. Muffin was a stray who was born under a neighbor's shed and came out crying, following some of the neighborhood kids. I took him in, but that had been several months before, and I thought maybe it had something to do with that. Maybe he had some kind of parasite that wasn't taken care of or some kind of worm that wasn't taken care of. Before taking him to the vet, I decided to look into it a little bit. And the first thing I found out was there's a big difference between throwing up or vomiting and regurgitation. Regurgitation is when they throw up almost immediately after they eat. The food might not even have reached their stomachs. It's usually still undigested and sometimes comes out in an elongated shape like the shape of their esophagus. It can also have mucus mixed into it. Throwing up is when the food has already gotten to their stomach and is partially digested. The most common cause of regurgitation is that they are eating too fast. So I thought I'd try to solve this problem before I took Mr. Muffin to the vet. First, I started feeding him in another room so that he wouldn't feel like he was in competition with the other cats and afraid possibly that they were going to take his food. Also, it helped me to limit him rushing around from bowl to bowl trying to eat as much of the other cat's food as possible, which is something that he was prone to do then and is still actually prone to do now. I also raised his bowl up about 1.5 inches on this little platform. Raising the bowl helps to even out their digestive tract and helps to prevent regurgitation. So if your cat is throwing up, you might consider regurgitation as a possible problem. But let me say right now that I am not a vet and this is not medical advice. I'm only sharing with you my experience of my cat throwing up, and I recommend that you see a vet whenever you think your cat has a medical problem. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like regurgitation was Mr. Muffin's problem. He was still throwing up, even though I had put him in a separate room and raised his bowl. I also thought that Mr. Muffin might have developed a food sensitivity or food allergy, and I had read that fish was a common problem with many cats. So I tried to eliminate any fish from his diet. So all of that went away, but he was still throwing up. And then I switched and I tried to eliminate the poultry foods, but he was still throwing up with those. So it didn't seem to me like those were the problem. So I made an appointment with the vet. And in the meantime, I continued my own investigation. One of the things I want to say here is that Mr. Muffin had what is called chronic vomiting. That is, vomiting periodically over a long period of time. That's as opposed to acute vomiting, which is your cat doesn't vomit and all of a sudden it starts to vomit. That is a much more serious situation, and if your cat is doing that, you should take it to the vet right away. So here are some of the questions you should consider if your cat is vomiting. Did you switch food recently? Did it start on any new medications? If you have other cats, are they vomiting also, or is it only one of them? Does your cat go outside? How often does it throw up? Did your cat also stop eating, or is it having diarrhea? Is it sneezing? This might indicate that it has caught a virus. Is it also drinking a lot? This might be an indication of diabetes. Is it losing weight? And how long has this been going on? The answers to these questions can help you and your vet figure out what's going on and what to do about it. Mr. Muffin was eating the same food. He had not started on any medications. The other cats were not throwing up. He did not go outside. He had a good appetite. He did not have diarrhea. He was not losing weight. All that was left was that he threw up frequently and it went down for way too long to be normal. Now, if it's real vomiting and not just regurgitation, here are some of the possible causes. It ate a non-food item, such as a rubber band. Parasites. He became sensitive to a particular food. Inflammatory bowel disease. Constipation. Cancer. An ulcer. Or some kind of toxin that he's ingested. I considered constipation and checked to see if he had dry, hard stools or if he was straining when he went to the bathroom, but none of that seemed to be the case. I checked to see if he had gotten into any of the chemicals under my sink or in my workshop, but again, I didn't see anything disturbed. There are also a variety of diseases that can cause vomiting in a cat. Some of them are pancreatitis, liver disease, kidney disease, diabetes, And I have already mentioned cancer. But only a vet can determine if your cat has one of these, and they are rather rare, especially for a very young cat like Mr. Muffin, who was under 1 year old at the time. Now, if your cat is vomiting more than once a day, if there's blood in the vomit, if he is lethargic or losing weight, these could indicate a serious condition and you should take your cat to the vet right away. Fortunately, Mr. Muffin was not experiencing any of these conditions. When time for his appointment came, the vet thought that the most likely cause was a food sensitivity or food allergy that Mr. Muffin had developed. There are a variety of tests that the vet could do, but she thought they were not necessary. Tests like x-rays, ultrasounds, blood work, etc. She thought that testing a single protein diet was probably the first step, and I explained that I had already tried eliminating the fish and then eliminating the poultry, and neither of those seemed to work. Now here's something that I didn't know and that she explained to me, which is that even though a food might be titled chicken or fish, that does not necessarily mean that that's the only protein in that particular food. That they might mix turkey into chicken or even add some kind of fish protein. And unless you read the labels very carefully, you might not actually know what is in the food that your cat is eating. So I slowly switched him to a single protein food. I believe it was turkey at the time, and started feeding him only that, even though it was quite an expensive food. But nothing happened. He continued to throw up periodically, and I didn't know why. All of this took at least a couple of months to work through, and it cost me several $100s and a lot of time cleaning up vomit. But eventually the problem and the solution presented itself, and I realized I was dumb. Because the food for Mr. Muffin, the single protein food, was very expensive, I started buying some of the kibble, some of the dry food that was the same type of food, the same single protein. And I realized one time when I was cleaning up the vomit that it had a lot of undigested kibble in it. It had these hard little pieces that were swallowed whole and had not even been chewed. And then I realized that I had been giving him dry treats that were the same kind of dry kibble, that he had not been chewing it, he'd just been swallowing it. It gave him a stomachache and he threw it up after a while. And this is why switching the foods and so forth didn't do anything, because it wasn't the foods, it was the treats, and I didn't think about the treats. So I stopped giving him dry treats, and boom, the problem was gone. I was actually lucky. It could have been a lot worse. So now one problem of throwing up that I did not mention is hairballs. Cats can throw up hairballs all the time, but that requires a whole video of its own, which I have linked right near here somewhere. So I hope you watch that, and in the meantime, please like and subscribe if you thought that this video was useful to you.